What I have here is one of the most interesting examples of deceptive marketing in the 78 RPM era. This is, of course, a Victor 78. It contains on side A the Mariner's Waltz, the Mate's Waltz, as in a ship's mate, and on the B side, Vesely Chassis, or Happy Hours, by the Instrumentowi Quintet Warszawa, the Warsaw Instrumental Quintet, of course, we assume, from Poland. But really, they weren't. In fact, they didn't even exist. This was actually recorded by the Jarl Instrumental Quintet, led by Eddie Jarl, who was a Swedish-American. It was recorded in New York City in April of 1928, and originally released that same year, with the credit to the Jarl Instrumental Quintet. The original title of the recording on side A does translate the same way in Swedish. It's the Mate's Waltz. But the track on side B was originally the Ball in Karlstad. Now, Victor was releasing these recordings in their ethnic series, targeting immigrants who lived in America and to a lesser extent in Canada. And they figured there was some money to be made by marketing the same recordings to different groups of immigrants, retitling them and coming up with new artist credits to make it seem that the artists came from their own home country. Thus, the recordings were issued for the Polish market, credited to the Warsaw Instrumental Quintet. They were also issued for the Slovenian market, again with new titles and an artist credit which translates simply to Victor Music Quintet. And all three of these versions came out in the same year. There was also a version that had the titles in English, but still retained the correct artist credit. These recordings, and others made by the Jarl Quintet on the same date, were so popular with Swedish Americans that they actually remained in the Victor catalog for close to 30 years, with their final issue on 78 coming out in the mid-1950s. The translated versions don't seem to have been as popular, but they were in print into the 1930s, so it seems that this strategy was successful enough to actually pay off for Victor. By the way, in case you're wondering, these recordings were also issued in Japan. How that came about, I don't know, but the titles were kept the same. In addition to all these different versions, some of the Jarl Quintet's other recordings were issued by Victor under the name International Octet, which was a generic name used by Victor for several different groups, most commonly their own studio band when they were performing foreign selections. These recordings were also very popular and again stayed in print for a very long time, some of them actually lasting into the vinyl era. Now what's really surprising is that Victor wasn't the only record company to have an idea like this. In fact, years earlier, OK Records had done the same thing, but in a slightly different way. You can see this example here. This record is from OK's Polyglot series, which is quite rarely seen, but were pressed in decent numbers in the early 20s. As you can see from the labels, it has 3 different recordings by 3 different groups on each side, only it doesn't. Once again, we have a little bit of deception going on here, as of course there is only one recording on each side. It just has 3 different titles in 3 different languages. In this case, we have German, Italian, and I believe Hungarian. What we can see then is that OK were using the same strategy that Victor came up with later, except they were making it much more obvious. I have to imagine that even back in those days, anyone looking at one of these record labels would realize that only one of those titles can possibly be the real title of the recording, and the other 2 must just be pseudonyms. So how successful would they actually have been at marketing this to 3 different groups of people? I don't know. So there you have it. 2 different but similar ways of marketing the exact same recordings to different language-speaking groups during a time when the music industry was still forming into its modern state. Just something I wanted to show off quickly, since both of these records are now on their way to a new home. Hopefully I will be back with some more content very soon. I have something in the works finally about all the records I brought back from Korea, and maybe more features coming up soon. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching.